Welcome to the first, the last, the Nerdom, the podcast where we're the first, the last, and everything in between when it comes to nerd culture. This week, we're diving back into our special series we like to call Binge Worthy, uh, where we pick a TV show that's caught our eye, we watch the first three episodes and decide if it's worth committing to the long haul or if it's one and done. And this time, we're rewinding to the late 90s to revisit one of Britain's most beloved cult comedies, Spaced, created by Simon Pegg and Jessica Hynes and directed by Edgar Wright. Before he became a household name, Spaced is a chaotic, clever, and endlessly quotable series about two 20 somethings pretending to be a couple so they can rent a flat and stumbling headfirst into the surreal pop culture soaked madness of everyday life, packed with rapid fire references, surreal humor, and that unmistakable Edgar Wright energy. Spaced was, or it has, long been seen as the blueprint for what would later become the Coronado trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. But the question is, does it still hold up today? And more importantly, is it binge worthy? Practice your robot dance moves, stock up on Jaffa cakes, and prepare for some late 90s nostalgia because this week on the first, the last Nerdom, we're moving in with Space. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
I'm good. I'm good. All right. So this is one of our we've kind of been on a roll with our British shows,
We
so
have.
we thought we'd continue it with Spaced. I know I've seen several episodes in the past. I think this is new to you, right?
It was. I've never seen this before. I'm very familiar with Simon Pegg. Love
Mhm.
him, and a lot of things that he's done that we've covered, and a lot of things that we
Uh-huh.
haven't covered. Uh,
Yeah, and we did a special episode of the Coronado trilogy. We covered all three films.
we did.
So if you're interested in what we say about this, you might want to check back what we said about that previously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this one was a lot of fun. Fun for me, and we're gonna get into it here. But first, we got to pay the bills. Um, and oh, look at that, Tom. A promise was made. Promises made. Promises kept. Um, with
Yeah.
a little bit of airing out of time. Well, of course. It just took a really long time for the paint to dry on this website, which is why we had to wait so long, of course. And if you believe that foolishness, well, you're in good company here with the first, last, and nerdum. This is our brand new website, our new home base, or one of a couple, castle in the cloud, so to speak. And of course we're there. We also have plans to actually do something with this beyond just being our home base here. So. And you can find us there at the FirstLastNerdom.com, and of course, as always, our true home here on YouTube. And I need to fix that too. I need to get rid of that website because that guy doesn't work at all. But as always, like I was saying, we're here on YouTube. In all seriousness, we do thank the 439 people who decide to subscribe to us. We thank you so much. Especially thankful for those who return. We are rolling up on 300 videos, and I think we'll probably hit that in. We're coming up on year 4, so we'll be starting our 5th year this fall, after we hit our 4 years. So probably sometime, maybe springtime, we'll hit 300. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. Maybe a little bit before then. But as always, go check out our latest one that we just got done with Kroll, all the way out to awesome shorts that Tom puts out, that always get some kind of a cooking going. So check that out. Unbelievable amount of content and recommendations here on the first, the last, the nerdum. But Tom, you're over in that place called Reddit. Are you not, sir?
Warzone, that's Reddit. Yeah, I find the a subreddit that'll have me to promote our latest videos. Since this show's on Tubi, I'll probably be promoting on Tubi TV. They're always nice about that. So if you've come over from there, hello. Thanks for checking us out. but yeah, you can check me out. You'll see me running around subreddits near you. I'm also on X under the same name, FirstLastNerdom, and I do a little reviews and different things on this as well, and promote our videos. So if you want to know what our latest and greatest video is, it'll be out there on X for you to check out.
Absolutely. I too am on X, where Tom and I occasionally will have a crossing of the swords or a good conversation, good commentary at least. But ApeIt_Ink. You can also find me as co-host to Professor Kinney's Step Into a Cafe Americana. We were off this past week because it was Labor Day, and we're just, poor Professor Kinney had done the morning show like 5 days in a row. So so it was like, hey, yeah, let's take some time off. Also of note, you can find me also long form content, which I need to badly update. But you can find me on ApeIt.Ink, Substack as well. But this brings us to this week after we paid the bills. There was Spaced. I had never seen this, and this ran for a couple series, not seasons in the BBC. If you're
Yeah.
tied into the UK, like we are, then you would know that. But of course, many out there probably know far more than that. So this one is out there. It's on Roku, like you mentioned, on Tubi, on it looks like a few other ones. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess the question, what did I think, or is this binge worthy? And yeah, absolutely. Like this, and I
Yeah.
didn't quite know what to get, but as soon as you see Simon Pegg, I don't know what it is, but it kind of helps you zone in on that, and you're like, "What in the world?" um, but very, very much appreciated with how everything kind of rolls out. So I
Yeah.
guess I'll just kind of start there. Did you see this one, or I guess when did you? What was your history with this? And was this did this also cause you to be looking forward to films and other media that were that feature Simon Pegg prominently, as well as many other famous people as well. I don't want to say like he's the only guy, but there are very very good famous people on here. But I'll hand it back to you, sir.
No, my first introduction, major introduction to Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Edgar Winter was Shaun of the Dead.
Hmm.
Fell in love with that movie. Also Hot
Yeah,
Fuzz.
terrible.
I'd heard about Spaced, but it wasn't anywhere that it wasn't on any of the channels that we would see it. I would see it on. I saw most of my British stuff on IFC, and Comedy Central had Garth Marenghi.
Hmm.
But none of the my cable channels had Spaced, so I'd only heard about it, and it wasn't until streaming services became a thing, and they needed content to be on there. And I don't know if it was Netflix or one of the other ones that originally had it, where I finally saw it, but it wasn't until the 2010s before I actually got to see it. So it was relatively
Scooped up.
recent, within the past decade. But yeah, no, I did not see it in the late '90s. I think it came out in '99, in early 2000s. So yeah, I did not see it back then, but I'd heard about it. Definitely when they talked about when they talked about it and read about Shaun of the Dead. They always mention their origins, so I always wanted to see Spaced. So
Okay.
it was one of those highly anticipated things that I finally got to track down and see on streaming.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of find these I don't know, lovable losers or just normal people that kind of happen into each other, I guess, by happenstance at
Hmm.
the local diner or whatever the
Hmm.
UK version of that is. When I say that, I think YOOK KAY,
Yeah.
because it's just so British through and through, and it's just they also you can't help but both of these characters you kind of are repulsed by at different points, and maybe repulse is too strong for some in some cases, but you're like, oh, that's kind of a gross, but it does it in a way, and it's so, and I wanted to ask you about this, and we only did the first three, for this one. And we might check
Hmm.
back in later for if we maybe we'll follow up or not with some of these. That's also on the docket too when we
Hmm.
do these binge worthy. But you kind of get
Yeah.
the impression of like it feels like like roommates, like that this whole thing. It feels like a more down to earth real world Friends, I guess, would be kind of like with Friends. I say Friends not necessarily because they're two vastly different shows. I mean, they have some connective tissue, but they're definitely different executions on kind of a theme that you get. But you
Mhm.
also have in this thing with which is this, you have a little bit of zaniness out there, that isn't just kind of like a shenanigans or the scheme that the couple, only the scheme is the main thing, which works in its favor. So obviously, I'm speaking pretty positively of these things, of this, but I guess does this change over the course of its life, going into the second series as you kind of go on, or I guess where does that rise or fall for you as far as like, because there's just so many kind of things here, but with Simon Pegg, and in the UK, um, some things of like just people kind of just surviving, I guess, I don't know, like it's just very
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting, because none of these people are at the top of their game, like that's also, but that's makes it more relatable because they're just kind of like they're also kind of brought together based on some bad luck, and like, well, this sucks
Yeah.
and that sucks, but there's this thing I'm not familiar with in the BBC, like I don't know if that's a real thing or not, the plot around
Yeah.
what happened,
Right.
but
Yeah.
anyway, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, there's well, there's kind of odd kind of Three's Company kind of vibe to it, and the kind of the
That's true.
setup where they're getting renting this apartment or this flat under false pretenses, and Edgar, um I think Edgar Wright, maybe it's Simon Pegg, that kind of they call this kind of a cross between The Simpsons, The X-Files, and Northern Exposure. I don't know if I
Hmm.
see all of those elements in it, but it's definitely got
Huh.
that kind of Kevin Smith vibe to it as well. You've got
Oh.
these 20 somethings, but with a very British slant to it.
Oh yeah.
20 somethings are very kind of self-obsessed. They're they're not fully developed as a person yet. They think they're grown up and ready for the world, but and very much in their fashion, they're obsessed with their idiosyncrasies and their that time the social media wasn't a big play, but all their media as far as movies and video games and with the Pegg character comic books. Yeah, there's that
Which you find
whole
out right
me.
away also, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You get that media obsessed nature to them. That Kevin Smith had a very good way of expressing on film, and this show definitely does that.
It's a good way to put it.
It, it mixes a good sense of how 20 somethings were kind of at that time, very much a Gen X kind of a slacker vibe to them, kind of kind of comfortable in the of not kind of underachieving, and
Right.
there's definitely that element to this, so you either kind of have to kind of fall into their world and love it, or you're just kind of just shrug your shoulders and go, yeah, they're 20 somethings. But yeah, it's got its unique charm if you're there for it, but and there's grains of reality of how 20 somethings were at that time, but it also kind of goes into the fantasy land, like especially in episode 3 where yes, the Tim, the Simon Pegg character, gets really into Resident Evil 2 game and starts to
Yeah.
see zombies everywhere.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, yeah, the art. Yeah, it's funny too from coming from IT crowd. There
Hmm.
was a similar kind of hijinks a little bit, although not
Hmm.
quite dialed out as the IT crowd took it.
Right.
But it works very well. Like yeah, you know what? Um, there also is a call and response too. So like in the I think it was in episode 2. I think Daisy is and also Daisy is adorable. And Simon Pegg Tim isn't quite adorable. That's I wouldn't quite say that, but he is he's an aspiring comic book artist, so there's this kind of this unrequited feeling about him. And there is that too with Daisy, but Daisy's gets cuter. So, you kind of go in, and they both kind of have like half baked. I got a little bit of half baked also from this too.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I mean that in a good positive way. But there is there is like that what I'm trying to think of when he's talking about his video games. And Daisy, I won't be able to find it, but she says she responds with like she drops some X-Files knowledge. Like there's that. So it's so funny how they can get along enough. The premise of
Hmm.
the show is that they have to cohabitate, masquerading as
Hmm.
a couple. Like you had said, Three's Company was perfect teeing up, but a little bit more like where that's a little bit more innocent, despite the
Hmm.
TNA that you got with that show,
Hmm.
which was
Hmm.
par for the course for the era and the time too. So it wasn't like a big
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
They also don't shy away from. Now this stuff would have been censored if it had it been in the United States. Nobody would have showed this, outside of HBO, even back then. Well,
Hmm.
they were very free to talk about drugs and drug use. Um,
Yep.
and they don't shy away from it too. There's a few kind of scenes of like where they kind of there's a give and a take, and it's just kind of like, yep, that's what a young 20s person would probably be. Not every 20, because you had the straight edgers too, and then and the squares, I guess is what you call them, but it works in the favor. There's just such a charm that this has that you can't get away from, and you and then I love how you're the next moment you're like right into like something like how the hell did we get into this again? Like, and then they do like to
Absolutely.
party. They like to party a lot. That's kind of a reoccurring theme that I would
Yes.
imagine comes back again and again. Is that a good bet, Tom?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, yeah, your average 20 something's gonna
party. Right.
gonna have something to do on a weekend or a weekday.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, it really wears its social well, it's media influences on its sleeve. There's a heavy influence of the X-Files, of course,
Right.
because who wasn't big into X-Files in the late 90s, early 2000s. And the Simon Pegg character is named Tim Beasley, which is in honor of the artist Simon Beasley, who does the actual art that the character Tim actually shows off as his own in the show is actually Simon Beasley's art. So tip of the hat to Simon. If if Tim was actually drawing like Simon, he would be an immediate hit in comic books because Simon's art is fantastic. He's a legendary comic book artist, painter, extraordinaire. He's done some really, really remarkable stuff, and he's one of those artists that when you see his work, you immediately know who it is because he's got
That's awesome.
that signature. But that's a coup for them for getting him to do the artwork in this show, and it's very cool to see. I'm kind of curious because he has that character, the bear, and then the evil doctor
Right.
that creates him. I'm kind of curious where if they ever did anything like a special comic book for
Right.
that. Maybe if someone out in the audience knows a little bit more about space than we do, and know where we could find Simon's art, if it's actually in a art book or a
Sure.
special comic book, definitely let us know. I was kind of curious on this rewatch of the show,
Yeah, and
whether or not that was out there.
I do kind of get vibes of artists, comic book artists, and we've talked about kind of through not necessarily. I mean, we've always touched on it, like, and we try to find them and promote them, or just marvel at their and praise or admiration or jeering and booing sometimes. We don't do too much of that, but we have before and we will again. Um, Harvey Picard is one that kind of name that kind of I can't help but wonder if I were to watch this all the way through, and then I would go watch a Harvey the movie with uh, uh, God
Yeah.
it's so fan. Anyway, I'll pull it up here in a minute, but uh, you kind of get in other words, there's a vibe, right? So I also think that it's funny too because this was like kind of set in like because of and not to bring politics into it or whatever, but for the time, the I was touching on the premise of the thing, which is just a sitcom gimmick, which it is what it is, but they had to do that because they couldn't afford to do that, be on their own, like, and have
Hmm.
housing for two individual people. They had to come together. And I would also say, um, I wouldn't necessarily call them either one quirky per se. Like, they're pretty normal for what they are. But there is that desperation that they have, kind of like not quite Seinfeld,
Hmm.
but it definitely has its own flavor of it, that works in its favor. That you kind of go in and out of the, like whether you're with Tim and you're going in and out, and he's prone to pretty elaborate fantasy sequences too. So like,
Yeah.
but you know what though? But Daisy has her own version of that. She's prone to just exaggeration. Like when she's kind of like
Hmm.
he's saying like what she's gonna do and what she is and what. Well, I haven't quite wrote it yet, or whatever. It's
Right.
kind of like well, you
Yeah.
kind of got to be published before you can be published, kind of sensibility.
Yeah.
But you can tell that
Yeah.
they both aren't. The one thing I do think that I don't think that they don't come across to me as like buffoons or incompetent necessarily.
Hmm.
Like they're just trying to make it, and that it works in the favor of it. I don't know. It
Hmm.
works for their chemistry very much. Um,
Hmm.
and it's just so funny how like they'll be like kind of tongue in cheek things a lot, but um,
Right.
it works. But
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of interesting watching different comedy series back to back. With the IT crowd, the comedy was more. The characters are definitely there. Very strong characters, very
sure,
individual characters. But the comedy was mainly in the snappy dialogue.
right.
The kind of returning to the joke here and there to really bring it up, and also the physical comedy. There's a lot of physical comedy in this. Is in the IT crowd as well, and in this one, it's more situational comedy, and also the characters, but developing the characters and in their dialogue is more story based, and then the comedy is in the situations as opposed to like snappy one liners
Hmm.
or things that it's almost like a it's almost like taking a sedative after the IT crowd because because the IT crowd kind of hits you over and over again, and
Oh yeah,
you're really kind of having to take a breath through there. And whereas this is more kind of slower pace, kind of getting to know the characters, and there's comedy beats in it, but it's more of a the situation that's funny. It's not per se what they're saying that's really funny. It's sort of like the overall
well,
situation, and they do have like their
right,
crazy neighbor character that's kind of reminiscent of Kramer.
right.
But again, he's more of a character, and you get to know him. You don't he's not like stumbling into a wall or something to get the laughs. It's in what he says and kind of how the character kind of develops on you.
Well, and a lot of the comedy I found lived or died on just the casual banter, that was the dialogue between the characters, which
Yeah.
which it reminded me of what growing more when I was a teenager, that and a little bit as an adult, but more so as a teenager, like where you're with your buds, your friends, and you just kind of you kind of just diss on each other, but you take it, not, it's not in a malicious way. I mean, you could ask that question, the sincerity of like some of the comments a little bit malicious. Yeah, well, yeah, they're pointed. The different sensibilities, different time for sure. But it did have that natural banter where it did work because everybody pretty. I mean, you also kind of sort of, and we only saw it for three. Well, we're going to talk about it for three, but there is a certain kind of rising maturity too in some of the characters, like as they go along, which you can, I've seen enough of these, BBC things, and just watching movies and just being familiar with pop culture and a consumer of it. There is a maturity too, like where you can't help but kind of pick favorites, I mean, or maybe not
Yeah.
favorites, but like, the quirkiness and the absurdity is built in, but it's not overpowering or overwhelming. It works. It always kind of ties back to the joke or to the rise of like where they're going, and it works very well for me. And but you have episode 1 through 2, but and you also kind of get to used to the ins and outs of what the show is. Like somebody's taking a trip.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you could see again, this is early in the career of Simon Pegg and Edgar Winter, so you get to see the what develops into, say, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. What really makes those movies work is what they went through this show to kind of work out what works and what doesn't work, and so this is sort of like their learning ground. So it may not be their best work, but you get to see, like the beginnings of what's there that gets developed later on in the trilogy. You get to see those characters kind of develop
Well,
within
and
themselves.
stripped
Yeah, you
down
see.
too.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, and since this is a series, you get and it's longer, obviously. You got 14 episodes to kind of tell these characters' story.
Right.
You get to live with these characters for a little bit. So you get to know them, like you said, a little bit better
Right.
than say in a movie. So they kind of become living and breathing, and you enjoy being with these characters, and whether or not the episode's like the best in the world, you're enjoying it because you're with these characters again, and you enjoy hanging out with them. A lot of what you do when you're in their 20s is hang out, and you can't find probably a better group of people to kind of hang out with than these characters. And there's certain British shows that translate that can be translated to a successful show in America, like The Office became like a huge show that I would say became even bigger in America. The American version of the show became bigger than, say, maybe the British one, and although Ricky Gervais is legendary in the Office in the British one, but yeah, I think the American one, since it went on longer, kind of became bigger than and maybe even worse when it got towards the end when things kind of went off the rails. But yeah, so there's certain shows that work well like
Right.
that. They did try. I didn't mention it on our previous show on the IT crowd, but they did try an American version of it that only lasted for a pilot that didn't get picked up. But I really just couldn't see it as an American show. And also
No.
this series, they tried to translate it, but the thing that makes it work is that it's British. It's these British characters. It's very very British a show, and I think you take out the heart of the show when you try to make it like maybe I don't know, maybe hip New Yorkers. It just wouldn't quite work. You'd have to really rework who these characters are, and I think they tried to get Edgar Wright to do an American version, which he passed on, and I think they ended up selling it to Fox, but they never did actually make it into a show. So we didn't get to see the abomination that it would have become if
No,
they had made an American version. And
no.
you could tell a similar story, but you really would have to very much Americanize it
Oh,
and change it into
you
something that's different.
you would have to change some things you could keep, but you would have to find the right personalities around it to deliver it. And I
Hmm.
agree with you. It'd be very, very hard. Whereas this, like, what you kind of going back what you were saying before, you kind of use some words like, sedate. There's like a lacquered sedateness with the UK, with the where they're
Hmm.
going, you know, nowhere fast, but fast enough to not be on the street, to be homeless. So
Yeah,
they're kind of caught in those
right.
those two different speeds. And when they do
Hmm.
relax, you just get kind of like like the drug culture. It's not really that big of a deal in the way that you are presented it. It's just casual. It's not
Hmm.
the focus like where
Right.
other British films, maybe they spend a little bit more time on that, but it's just kind of part of it's just another kind of thing that they pass through.
Hmm.
Um, Although there is some kind of funny effects though, like when, maybe getting high before your interview, not a good idea. And it's so funny too because they know better, and they kind of like I remember Daisy was saying something like, he's like, here you go, you're having a bad day, or here or here's your day, and she's right before she's going to go for an interview, which she finds out moments before from a letter, which is also kind of a touchstone on the era too, which is funny. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Um Although I don't really remember getting a letter for interview per se in my lifetime. It was more of like a phone
Right.
call, but still, but
Right.
still,
Yeah.
but still,
Yeah.
that was a thing for sure. But she's just, like, oh, I don't want to be paranoid or something like that. And then, oh, gonna do it anyway. And then, she goes, they have kind of like this kind of back and forth later on. And he's like, oh, well, when you mean it basically went to shit. And she was like, yeah. Like, and he goes, did she said something about girl power, because they asked her,
Yeah. I
first
ended
wave
it with girl
feminist.
power.
Yeah. And he goes, did
Did you?
you did you do this? And she's like, and then anyway, it works. It works. And it also
Mhm.
kind of makes you more open to these characters and wanting to love them a little bit more. Like, as strange as that sounds, like, you
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'm very curious because it has enough sitcom kind of questions, and
Hmm.
sitcom premises are like really small and tiny, right? And
Yeah.
some you can they're so tiny and minor, unless you have some attachment to the actors and the acting and the characters, or all three of those. You kind of don't give a shit, right? But you care.
Hmm.
If you care about the people there, so you do stick around to watch 7 seasons of The Office, the U.S. version, to see if Pam and Jim, get together. There are these kind of
Yeah.
these natural things that come out that are so normal,
Hmm.
but there is just a level of, just kind of freewheeling that is also refreshing, that I like,
Yeah.
from just the
And
absurdity,
yeah.
and the humor around it, which,
Yeah.
and it's not like something that is just kind of like leaves you off a cliff. Like, 1 second you're on solid ground, and the next thing you know, like, what the hell? What are we doing? Like, it's not quite like that. Like the Mighty Boosh,
Yeah. The fantasy elements definitely work well in this.
yeah,
I love the there's a moment where the Simon Pegg's character Tim imagines back when him and Mike were kids, and he kind of looks up to the sky to he's looking back, and it fades to them as children sitting in a tree, and um, the character for Simon Pegg, the kid's got his hair dyed blonde, much like how the current Tim is, and
right,
Mike, the kid Mike, has a mustache.
right, right,
as Mike does in real life. So yeah, and then that that kind of reminiscing dream sequence kind of gets interrupted by someone knocking or ringing on the door, and it immediately kind of goes away. I like the whole build up to the flashback, and just kind of goes nowhere.
Well, and you get archetypes too a little bit, I guess. But you get, like with Mike and Tim, you can tell like that's a true blue. Like he is very protective of his friends, and is very kind. Um, I could see that become, more of that being explored. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and I like the fact that there's that friendship there. Mike is played by Nick Frost,
right.
who was a waiter before he did this acting job, and they weren't sure if he would actually be able to act because he was a waiter,
Oh, really?
hadn't acted before. So yeah, but I think it was to their benefit to get someone that's familiar with them, that were friends with them, and yeah, he's really kind of a standout character
Yep.
in the show.
Yep. No, it goes into it, but I guess so. The answer, if you stuck around this long, is
Yeah.
yes. This is a binge worthy
Hmm.
film. Would you echo
Hmm.
that, Tom?
Yes, yes, it's definitely a binge worthy episode or series. And the cool thing about all of them ones that we've talked about so far are not a huge time investment. Like this one's 14 episodes, the previous ones were kind of around that, some less and some more. So we've been recommending stuff that's not a huge time sink. We I promise you we won't in this series, we won't get to a series where we say, well, you have to make it through the first two seasons. But yeah,
No.
things really get good in the third, and then you're off to the races. We'll never tell you that you're gonna have to suffer through 20 hours of a show before it gets good.
Right.
No, no, that's not a binge worthy show, in my
Exactly.
opinion.
No, I agree. Completely agree. Yeah. I'm looking forward to watching more of this. Like it's just kind of a cool thing, and that's what damned if the BBC didn't nail it early on. So I can see like where if you can you, it took me a lot longer to be more polished with my like knowing if I wanted to stick around for a show or but
Mhm.
the BBC makes it very exceptionally easy because of these things are shorter and there's many more things of them. But it works out very
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, the seasons are shorter, so you don't get all the fluff. A lot of American shows, they have to pad out like a whole, 10, 13 episode season. So you get a lot of filler. You get a lot of stuff that you don't really need. Whereas this, like this show and many others, is one banger after another. So yeah, there's very much a sense of you only have or 6 or 7 episodes. You got to make sure all of them count. So,
Yeah,
and if it doesn't really work, then we don't have to do it. So, yeah, that's the cool thing about British shows that I've seen is yeah, if it's a good show, it's a good show, and yeah, you all this even though maybe they're not all bangers, they're all extremely good.
good, high quality. Yeah, I was gonna say too. This touches on tropes that are like out there like for a long time, or not tropes, but video gaming was a thing. Is very male dominated. That's still true today, especially in
Mhm.
our age demographic. We both, although I think you're a little bit more of a better gamer than I am, more consistent for sure. But every once in a while, it'll strike me. I was going through my photos, looking for some of our old um, assets, like our digital things that we use for the show and reuse. And I came across some when I was playing Stargate or Starfield. And I
Yep.
was like, damn, I missed that. But anyway, we'll see.
Yeah,
But
I don't know if I'm a really good gamer. I will say that after what is it, 12 years, I finally finished Grand Theft Auto 5 just in time for Grand Theft Auto 6 next year.
well,
I
you're right
I, I
on time.
realized that I stopped playing it. I originally played it on the PS3,
Right.
and then the PS4 version came out, and I was like, I'll switch over to that. But I only had like a handful of missions left to do.
Oh,
So
yep.
my third or fourth attempt to go through the game this time on Xbox Series X. I finally got it through, and I realized, yeah, there's probably only a couple of hours left of gameplay I had to
That's
finish
funny.
it, but yeah, kind of crazy, but yeah.
Yeah,
Still,
absolutely.
still a good game. Still a good game. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm slowly going back and finishing my back catalog of games because I've started a lot of them and never finished a lot of them. So I'm kind of going through and so which is good because it's very good on the pocketbook.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I kind of getting on a tangent here, but I do enjoy the ability to like subscribe to Microsoft or whatever or Sony. I don't
Oh
know what
yeah.
Sony has, but it's cool that that's an option. Maybe you're because I am probably on the hook for Battlefield, but that's a whole other animal. Like that I have.
Mhm.
There's some problems that I got to solve there because I don't necessarily think that I want to play it on a console. but that's
Right.
uh, but that's a different animal. But with that being said, this was it just familiar. It feels familiar. It feels comfortable. It feels good. Like that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So it does draw you in,
Yeah.
and it is
Yeah.
one to watch.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's been really fun going through these series. All of them kind of take place or were filmed during the 2000s. I don't know. I've really kind of gotten kind of it's been far enough along to where you can get reminiscent about the
Right.
2000s, and yeah, that was a different time. That of course social media was kind of creeping in, but it hadn't
Right.
quite taken over the world. We weren't all looking at our phones yet. We were still kind of soaking up media and kind of experiencing these things individually and expressing ourselves individually, whereas there's a lot of groupthink now, and it's really fun to kind of see these shows in that kind of snapshot of time that it's very fun to revisit.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think we're gonna end it there,
Hmm.
and stand by for next week, and then we'll come back at you with something fresh and something awesome, probably a little bit more
Hmm.
modern. I think we're gonna take a break from the oldies and goodies, but still, I've been Mike.
And Tom.
All right,
Yeah.
push the button, go.